I want to welcome you all to Principles of Management. I'm going to go through some topics that we're going to be discussing throughout our semester together. So first, management has to deal with many different factors. You all know that the world has become more and more globalized. We're dealing with interdependence across countries, different markets that are opening up, tremendous competition, as well as job migration and reshoring and outsourcing and all of these things, including advancing technology, whether it be virtual working or, whatever, many different technological implications to how business operates. So what needs to happen is a mix between, how we meet the demand for globalization by customers by building global capabilities, but also remaining responsive at the local level. Knowledge and intangible assets have become more and more important over time. It's your people capabilities, it's intellectual capital, even to a point where you have some jobs that are considered to be knowledge workers, where it's not just about data collection, but how you take different types of data and turn them into information, and then create the human experience around that information to create meaning and knowledge, which can influence how we operate and the practices that we implement in organizations to innovate and continue learning. Another big part of management is dealing with the ethics and values. Ethics are the moral principles, our standards of behavior, our codes that we follow, and it's can be as basic as things like integrity and honesty, and as it has evolved more over time to include things like social responsibility and sustainability, and the complexities that have now been added to management responsibilities. And then organizations are getting more complex. Organizations have many people who work towards a common purpose to provide useful goods and services to customers, while keeping that it's not just value to customers, but it's also looking at what we get from the environment, the supplies that we use to create that value, and to add value to the original cost of what those resources are. So, looking at things from the standpoint of efficiency, it's, looking about how to achieve our goals, but doing it in the most efficient way from a resource allocation perspective. Then, how do we deal with the people? And different organizations have different views on this. They all have goals, and they set goals, and they're trying to achieve those goals. The question is, how do they look at people in the equation? It's your basic buy or build choices, where some companies look at it from the standpoint of, let's go out, pay what we have to pay to get the skills and bring them into our organization. And there are some that look at it more through the lens of learning and development, in that we can get raw talent and train it internally to increase competencies and eventually meet our goals. And there are implications to both of those things as we consider what our role is as employees in organizations. And it's important as an employee or a potential employee to understand that organizations do have goals, whether they be financial or customer or quality oriented or risk management and compliance oriented or branding. All of these things, very important. The question is, how do you connect to these goals and help organizations achieve these goals? And you do that through building your skills about things like managing and implementing and researching and analyzing and things along those lines. Very important for all of us to have an understanding about how we add value to organizational goals. Another factor that's coming into play is the issue of diversity. And diversity is a broad term in many ways. You'll hear the term inclusiveness as well, where there is a business case for this. It starts with the legal aspects, whether it be under equal employment or affirmative action. It could be customer, where customer could be driving the need for a diverse employee base. Diversity is also a great opportunity to look at innovation. It brings in more ideas, and the more ideas that we get into an organization, it may increase the chances that we can convert those ideas into products or services that eventually can be used to roll out and commercialize. There's different types of managers in organizations. There are line managers that do the work of the organization, the production, the selling, etc. There's staff managers, which can be functionally driven as well. They might have a single area of technical expertise or functional expertise. General managers are responsible for complex units that can include many different functions. And then there are, in nonprofits and public organizations, you have the term called administrator, which is the equivalent of a GM. As in different levels of management require different skills. There are technical skills required, and generally that's required across the organization at all levels. There's the ability to cooperate and work with people. And then as you move up through the organization, you need to get skills related to being conceptual and strategic. Management has numerous functions: planning, organizing, leading, controlling, and you'll see there's different levels within the organization. These are some generic titles right here: specialist analyst, manager, director, VP, SVP, EVP, and at the C level as well. So you would look at the specialist having different levels within that title. It can go from junior to specialist to senior, and the same is true for manager and director, and on and on. How companies compensate people is also something that's critical to driving results and helping employees make achievements. This is a bell curve. Typically, employees, when they're coming into a company, would come into the section of the bell curve, which would be somewhere in the second quintile, usually below midpoint, and then they would grow through merit increases through the bell curve. This would be a salary range is the term. But as we saw, titles like manager can have different levels. So it could be junior manager, manager, senior manager, and that would be an example of a promotion where you can increase compensation as people increase responsibility throughout their jobs. The next issue that needs to be dealt with is things related to competition and competitive positioning. It starts with mission, asking simple questions like, what are we? What are we moving to? What is our dream? What do we want to be known for? What kind of difference do we want to make? And that would eventually translate into a mission statement, such as you'll see here an example: we produce or provide a specific product or service to or for our primary customers so that they can do whatever they need to do from a customer perspective. Here's a couple of examples. Patagonia: build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire, and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. American Express: we work hard every day to make American Express the world's most respected service brand. Warby Parker: to offer designer eyewear at a revolutionary price while leading the way for socially conscious business. And Honest Tea: to create and promote great tasting, healthy organic beverages, all representing the missions of their organizations. In terms of strategy, it's how do we look at things like competitive advantage to do something so well that it outperforms our competition, and do it sustainably and in a way that's difficult or costly for competitors to imitate. That would be sustainable competitive advantage. Understanding the sources of where our competitive advantage might be, whether it be technology, cost, quality, knowledge, speed, barriers to entry, our financial resources, many potential possibilities there. Also, the strategic intent, focusing all organizational energies on one unifying and compelling goal. And to be planful in how we guide our resource allocation to achieve long-term organizational goals. This applies to corporate strategy, it applies to business unit strategy, which all rolls up to the larger corporation. It matters for our functional strategies, such as finance, HR, manufacturing, marketing. So all of our strategies need to connect all of these pieces together, from analysis to strategy formulation to strategy implementation. Asking ourselves some pretty important strategic questions, like our mission, like knowing really who the customer is and what we do to add value for customers, and creating plans to make sure that that occurs. Also, to understand what are the forces that are outside of our organization within the industry. Are there new entrants that can threaten us? Are there products or services that can serve as substitutes? Can we have better bargaining power with our suppliers or with our customers? All of these things need to be considered in our strategic analysis. And then we make the decisions about what do we want to do to change. Change is an interesting topic. When you create your own change, you're doing it for your own purposes, and that's cool. You're sort of ambivalent about other people's change. But when there's big change that happens to us, it can be scary. But it's scarier not to change at all, because that's when we can lead ourselves or our organizations into extinction. So part of how we decide is by planning, and that it means knowing what our purpose is, our vision, to create various potential ideas of where our company can be today and in the future, called scenario planning, to have a long-term version of contingency planning should things not play out, based on alternative future scenarios, but have plans for all of the potential scenarios that can play out. When we talk about long-term, in terms of strategic planning, typically that's 3 years out. And then in terms of our short-term planning, that would be our year-to-year movement towards our strategic goals. There's also tactical and functional plans, often referred to as change plans, where employees and departments evolve towards meeting strategic objectives. Those can be related to production, finances, facilities, logistics, marketing, all operations, human resources, and how metrics may also change over time. Managers use different tools for planning purposes. Forecasting could be looking into the future, and whether it be qualitative or quantitative, using whether expert opinions or mathematical models or statistical analysis. Benchmarking is a very powerful planning tool to make comparisons inside and outside the organization, and to be able to understand and adopt best practices and bring them into the organization for improved performance. Contingency planning is huge in the need to adapt to changing conditions around the organization. Setting objectives and identifying desired outcomes and results, and having project plans and for action steps so that everyone knows how they connect to the organizational objectives. And that could be as these simple steps here, such as define your objectives, determine where you stand in relationship to your objectives, develop premises regarding future conditions, analyze your alternatives, implement the plan and evaluate its results, And the benefits of these things is to improve focus, flexibility, the action orientation, the coordination of control within the organization, and cycle time and time management within the organization. Goal alignment, critically important to have everybody focused in the right direction between team leaders, team members, and how different teams roll up to each other in a department or a function or a business unit, and all the way up through the entire organization. And then how goals are managed, of course, within that is very important because everybody has their own part to the overall goal. Then there's issues related to quality. Because you may have the best plans completely throughout the organization, but even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. So there's the need to constantly move forward and adapt and change because there's many influences on what can happen within an organization. Many stakeholders are around that can alter your direction, whether it be government institutions, suppliers, competitors, your own employee base, legal issues, customers, financial institutions, your stockholders, labor unions, political groups, public interest groups. All of these stakeholders will have some impact on how you need to adapt and change. Economic conditions, the health of the economy, what's happening with jobs and the relationships with all the countries. What are the markets doing? Is there any challenges in the outlook of employment? Legal and political regulations and policies, and anything that goes on within political parties and shifting perspectives that they'll have as well. Technology again can have a huge impact on an organization. Whether it be mobile technologies, social networking, work at home, all of those things. And then the ongoing environmental issues, such as could be natural disasters or accidents that occur, or the push now for sustainable business goals being set within all organizations as well. And the other aspect of this is going to be the level of uncertainty, where depending on the rate of change in the environment and the complexity of the environment, when those two things are combined and they're high, that requires a great amount of flexibility and adaptation, which will lead organizations to constantly evaluate the service that they have, how their customers change, and their ability to meet customer needs, as well as the different benchmarks that keep moving around them, and how they may have to adapt to continue to add value, and to take a look at their internal performance and really understand why gaps are happening if they are. And these are all things that are critically important that management needs to stay on top of. To think about things more systemically, to be strategic, to understand complexity, and to understand through ongoing process improvement that cycle times to deliver products and services must continue to be quicker and quicker. And all of those things are a part of innovation and change, and how we continually put new ideas and practice into place, again, to take those product, process, and business model innovations and look at them and translate those innovations into convertible services and products that customers and clients will want, so that they could be commercialized for the long-term positive achievements of the organization. Senior management has to be on top of all of this. They have to constantly be looking at quality and promoting quality. They need to have strategies that include data collection, understanding gaps, understanding improvement, to continue to coordinate and look at their organization for any potential redundancies, to understand measures of cost and time, and quantity and quality and the human interactions, and to be really expert in communicating all of these things, from beginning to end within their organizations. Quick example of a management problem. So there was a major claims dispute processing issue within an organization, and we're currently at 40% of disputed claims were forwarded on to department leaders, which means that 60% of claims were resolved by the person who was initially assigned the claim. The desired goal was for 90% of claims disputes should be resolved by the representative who was initially assigned to the claim, which creates a performance gap of 30% between desired and current performance. So what is the monetary significance of such a gap? Because the department managers are paid more than the claims representative, it costs more to have them processing claims unnecessarily. And initial estimates in this case indicated an opportunity to save $200,000 annually. After being diagnosed, the results were this. After consulting managers in the claims settlement department, the following were the reason why claims were forwarded, why they were forwarded so many claims. There was an initiative issue and an experience issue. So an intervention was put into place, a full-day session led by a manager of major claims who communicated to representatives the importance of exercising initiative. Techniques of increasing confidence level of representatives was incorporated into this as well. The belief was that the initiative was possessed by all the reps, so this was considered a refresher with the intention of changing performance. And the cost of the initiative, which was diagnosis, design, and development, and delivery and evaluation, was about $1,500. 3 months after the session, 95% of claims resolved by the claims reps. That was a 35% change, and at a savings of $110.40 per claim, which was a reduction in the manager resolution and an increase in rep resolution. And it was a company-wide savings, assuming 2,500 claims per year, which could equal $276,000. So it's a relatively simple example, but it shows how any intervention, any gap should be analyzed, solutions should be considered, and it could have a huge positive impact on the organization. I'm going to leave it at this for now. We're going to be discussing these topics throughout the semester. I am looking forward to covering these topics in more depth, and thank you for your time and attention.